In the end, for all of us, isn't the whole point of spiritual practice and spiritual awakening to enable this profound consciousness to take root so deeply within us that it revolutionizes our entire life? That we become a liberated or awakened or enlightened human being who is now able to express something of that essence, something of that sacred perfection in how we live our life.
Welcome to Meditation Changes Everything with spiritual teacher Craig Hamilton, a podcast exploring the deeper potentials of meditation practice and how it can change every aspect of human life. In today's episode, Craig explores the concrete ways in which meditation and spiritual awakening can transform our everyday lives. Often we think about spiritual awakening as an inner experience, like profound clarity, inner peace, or unconditional love. But as inspiring as they are, these inner experiences are only part of the picture. Most of us are on this path not just to feel differently, but to show up differently in the world. So what does spiritual awakening really look like in a human life? How does this profound internal shift show up in our behavior and how we handle life's challenges and opportunities? Today, Craig illuminates the most tangible and impactful ways spiritual awakening transforms our everyday lives, and how meditation can be the catalyst for our accelerated growth. We hope you enjoy the show. Here's Craig.
So we can have all kinds of experiences on the spiritual path, or even if we're not on a spiritual path, where either sort of accidentally or through practice, we encounter the sacred, the mystery. We come into contact with or intimacy with what we experience as a divine presence or an ultimate reality that temporarily transports us into a kind of knowing beyond our conventional mind, beyond our separate ego. And these experiences can invoke all kinds of powerful feelings, from experiences of bliss and joy and elation to experiences of profound love and immense gratitude for this life and for this sacred context we find ourselves in. And many, many other things. There are all kinds of varieties of religious and spiritual experience that human beings can have. Again, either just by chance, they just happen to us, or because we've been doing practices to try to stretch toward that. But when we speak about spiritual awakening or enlightenment, we're speaking specifically about the discovery of the source of all of those kinds of experiences, of the source of all of those insights and epiphanies and illuminations that we can have. And specifically, we're speaking about the earth-shattering recognition that this source, this profound sacred essence of everything, this sense of perfection that is at the core of all of reality, that is none other than who we are, who you are. That our true nature is not separate from that we are that. It's the discovery that I'm not who I thought I was. I'm not this limited, time-bound, skin-encapsulated person with a history of life experiences and certain preferences and personal goals. It's not that I'm not that at all, but that fundamentally I'm something so much greater, something vast, something infinite and sacred beyond comprehension. And that's not just the essence of reality, that's the essence of what I am. And this realization changes everything. It's the ultimate revolution from within that just turns our whole paradigm, our whole way of seeing, our way of being completely on its head, in the realization that this whole event is something so much greater, and that we are here to embody and bring forth something that our little self never could have conceived of. Something so glorious and magnificent and purposive and meaningful that it brings us to our knees in recognition of the significance of what our life can be. So it's that realization that this work is pointing toward. It's that realization that all of these practices are designed to invite or bring about directly. The kind of human life that becomes possible when we awaken in this way. What it really means to live an awakened life. It's not just informed by that realization, but that it literally is the living expression of that essence, that sacred essence, our true nature. I want to take a little bit of time talking about what I really mean by an awakened life, what an awakened life looks like in practice, in human form. Because after all, if any of us really look at why we're doing this or what it's all about, it's not about having powerful spiritual experiences, is it? I mean, we might sometimes imagine that's what it's about, and we might sometimes want to have these experiences of inner peace or inner bliss or, profound illumination. We might imagine that we're trying to get to some powerful experience sometimes and have our attention focused there. But in the end, for all of us, isn't the whole point of spiritual practice and spiritual awakening to enable this profound consciousness to take root so deeply within us that it revolutionizes our entire life, that we become a liberated or awakened or enlightened human being who is now able to express something of that essence, something of that sacred perfection in how we live our life. I know in the end, that was what it was always about for me on the path, even though I at certain times sought after spiritual experiences and had many spiritual experiences. In the end, if I really got down to it, I was like, well, I don't want to just have a great experience. I want to be an awakened being, someone who is changing the world into an expression of this essence by how we show up in our lives. That our behavior is manifesting the qualities, the gifts, what some of the traditions called the ornaments of awakening, the enlightened behaviors, the enlightened ways of living that are in a sense how we bring this extraordinary grace into the world. So I'm going to range over a few aspects of this, and I realized as I thought about wanting to share this with you that I could go on for probably hours and days and months about just this topic, and I think I probably have over the years of my teaching in different ways, but I just want to highlight a few of the aspects of the sort of human face of awakening, just to try to bring this down to earth a little. So when we awaken to this essential nature, one of the striking things that we discover, it becomes our natural way of being, is that we find ourselves in a remarkable sense of ease and flow in our life. That there is a way we are no longer struggling against life. We're not just, and people sometimes get confused and think, oh, it means you become passive and you're just surrendered to whatever life throws at you and you're no longer trying to make anything happen. And it's not that, because, one of the powerful things about being an awakened human being is that we have wisdom and insight and powerful care, which I'll talk a little more about. But that, we want to have an impact on the world. We want things to go we want the world to work in a more conscious and enlightened way. And so it's not that we become passive and just let life carry us, but that it's even in our desire to change the world and to express this higher nature, we find that there is a gracefulness, an ease, and a flow to how we move in life, how we interact with the world. Often that means everything's kind of going the way we sense that it could and should and want it to, and other times when it's not, we're still able to move and flex and flow and adapt very dynamically to what's happening. So this is one of the striking characteristics about how this looks in human form. And it also shows up as a kind of flexibility, and you could call that inner freedom. In other words, we're not getting stuck. We're not getting stuck on fixed ideas about how things should be, or emotional reactions to things that are happening. We have emotional reactions. We have ideas and maybe even strongly held beliefs at times that come forth, but all of it is it's flowing, it's moving through us. These are not becoming rigid structures that start to become obstacles to our natural, spontaneous response to life. So I just brought up something else. A natural, spontaneous response to life. What does that look like? You've experienced it. We've all experienced times when we're in a kind of flow and we're responding very spontaneously and naturally and unself-consciously, right? Without premeditation, not worrying about what everyone else is going to think, or not worrying about what's going to happen and I have to control it, but we're abandoned, we've let go, and we're moving with that flow, and our responses are happening faster than the speed of thought. They're happening spontaneously. Some version of what I just described is all of our experience at some points. Hopefully it's your experience often, but regardless, the point is this becomes a natural way of being when we're awake to our true nature, when we're awake to who we are beyond the mind. Another quality that comes forth is we find that we're a wellspring of energy, and it's a different kind of energy than our personal energy source. So often if we look at our lives, we find times when we have more energy, less energy. It seems tied to our sleep, also our stress load, our workload, and there's this kind of, each of us has our own little store of energy. We're like a battery. We get charged up through restorative activities, and then our battery gets drained. And I'm not saying that aspect of life goes away entirely. There's still something called your physical energy and probably mental energy, ability to concentrate. There are limits on our energy that do need to be restored in various ways. But when we're awake to our true nature, we find there is a whole another order of energy moving through our system that is not it's not coming from that battery cell. It's not our personal energy source, and it's not limited by that, and it doesn't need to be recharged in the same way. It's actually, the more we let it flow through us, the more we make ourselves available to it, we find that it seems to have no limit. And it seems to be just this unlimited power that that will flow through us to the degree that we make room for it. And I can already hear some of you going, wow, that sounds a little dangerous. I think, could that lead to burnout? Can we let that, give ourselves that energy too much and then end up, kind of wiping ourselves out? And I won't say the answer is no. I mean, I will say it having access to this kind of energy and being tapped into this does completely change what seem like the normal limits of the human being. But I will also acknowledge that, we all have to be mindful and paying attention on the path to where, which energy source we're using and whether our personal sort of batteries need recharging in different ways. But regardless of that, this energy source starts to really change just our experience of being alive and our experience of our own sort of energetic limits and where we look for our own power and force of, So there's another aspect of this, which I think I briefly mentioned earlier, which is, and I guess arguably it's really the most important one, which is the arising of wisdom. And wisdom is something that, has different dimensions to it. There's a kind of wisdom that comes from lived, learned experience in life, right? It's why we should listen to our elders to a certain degree about certain things, because they've accumulated a lot of life wisdom, had a lot of life experience. And we see ourselves as we mature, increasingly having certain kinds of wisdom. So there's a dimension to it that's accumulated in that sense. And there's also a dimension to it that's kind of cosmic, meaning there's a kind of super wisdom that starts to flow, which is a kind of spontaneous knowing. And I don't mean necessarily things like psychic powers or telepathy or clairvoyance or things like that kind, which also may or may not occur and are not, inherent in enlightenment, but they can be triggered by that. But I'm not talking about that. I'm saying that as our whole system, I spoke about that ease, that flow, that inner freedom and fluidity and flexibility and energy flow. As all of that is coming online, essentially we find that we start to operate as an organism in a kind of super holistic way, meaning there's a kind of integrative or integral force going on inside us that is enabling us to have this spontaneous wisdom, meaning penetrating insight into people, circumstances, situations, problems, challenges that the experience. It's not that it's not partly using all of your mind and your accumulated knowledge. It most certainly is, but it's also informed by your sensitivity to the collective field, to other people and their needs and what they're bringing to the moment. It's informed by a kind of attunement to the future and to where things are going or trying to go in each moment, and all of that funneling into this moment of spontaneous wisdom that seems to hit the mark in a way that seems kind of supernatural. It seems like a superpower. It is a kind of superpower or super capacity that does defy sort of the conventional ways that our minds operate. But some people would refer to that as intuition. I'm not against calling it intuition. It's just that these days intuition is very often confused with emotional, with feelings. In other words, very often people, I'm following my intuition means I'm doing what I feel like doing. Sorry to those of you who don't use it that way, but I encountered that kind of talking about intuition a little too often to just give it a blanket, endorsement of that. So, but yeah, this is a kind of super intuition, you could say. And And also on that front, this wisdom that I'm referring to also means simply really good judgment. So if you think about what gets in the way of us having good judgment as people, it's what? It's that we're invested in believing things are a certain way, or wanting them to be a certain way, or having a specific outcome. Our personal investment. I need things to be this way, both for my sense of self or my sense of security, or whatever it is. And that creates biases and distortions. I'm really simplifying a very complex set of psychological mechanisms. They're called cognitive biases. There's also all of our ego defense mechanisms. But all of these ways that we distort reality, we don't see clearly. And one of the miracles of your true nature, of what happens when you step into your own enlightened nature and enlightened consciousness, is it exists in a sense outside of all of those biases. When you're awake, you're no longer invested in seeing things other than the way they are. You're no longer need to have things go the way that you want them to go. You no longer need to see yourself as a certain kind of good person with certain qualities, and therefore you're going to avoid facing your qualities that aren't like that. There's a way that holistically we're now willing to be in reality, because there's a sense that being in reality is always going to lead to the best result. So I don't want to avoid things. I don't want to deny things. I want to face things. I want to be in alignment with truth. And because that is now like where it's your motivational center, it's where you're coming from, it's where you're living from, that enables you to really live in truth, which is another way of describing wisdom. To live, and by truth I don't mean I'm not going to get into truth. That I could talk about for days. I mean clear seeing of what's in front of you. Let's just put it that way. For the moment, that's what I mean by it. Now, what that also immediately gives rise to is the potential for what we could call enlightened action. Enlightened action, meaning you've got the good judgment to see things as they are and to discern what's needed in a given situation or moment. And guess what? You don't have any other agenda. Because what prevents enlightened action? Meaning, or even positive action, or even just doing the right thing. Why do people not do the right thing? Because they want something else. Because we have another agenda. So we won't see clearly, and we won't do what's needed. We'll do something less than that, that's maybe more self-serving, or at least self-protecting, out of fear or desire to make things go a certain way that serves us more than someone else, etc. So positive, and I'm going to say enlightened action becomes natural when you don't want anything else, when you're essentially your whole being has become holistically aligned with what we could call for the moment the greater good, holistically aligned with wanting the greater good, not insisting that you know what's for the greater good, right? Because why? There's all this humility, there's this innocence, this I don't know, but I want to know, I want to see. So that innocence, which is another quality, gives rise to the ability to see without agenda, and therefore I can respond without agenda. And my only agenda is I want to do what's needed here for everyone's benefit, for the greatest benefit that I can discern, or that we can discern together. So that enables this kind of action informed by wisdom and care. So which brings up another one of the qualities of awakened consciousness, is this universal care. We all know what it's like to experience care. You care for the people that you love the most. Hopefully all of us also care for people we don't even know. We find in situations where someone's in need that human beings show up with a care for people they don't know, for strangers, for other animals. We have the ability to care. So what happens to a human being in whom that ability is unleashed? Meaning that the heart is broken wide open and we care so much about the upliftment and health and positive evolution of everyone and everything, because we've realized it's me. I'm not separate from any of it. It's all part of me. It's all one event, and I care equally about all of it. When that kind of universal care starts to manifest as a person, that also then informs that enlightened action I was speaking about. And it also gives rise to another quality of awakened consciousness, which is courage and strength. Again, when we find we've awoken beyond our personal agendas and our limiting beliefs and our personal fears, and we're starting to live this bigger life for this greater purpose, if you will, yet another quality, a sense of purpose. If we start to live for this greater purpose and fueled by this profound universal care, informed by this universal wisdom, we find we have kind of boundless courage and strength to do what needs to be done, to take the risks that need to be taken, to say the uncomfortable things that need to be said in order to bring things into alignment with what? With their potential. You can hear me, I keep swinging from a little bit more cosmic language or religious or spiritual language to trying to make it a little more practical. You could boil that down to simply say, when we're in touch with the potential of things, what another person could become, what a group could become, what we could contribute together, what I can bring forth. When we're in touch with that potential, we want to bring that forth, and we'll do what it takes to do it. And we're not thinking about, oh, what's going to happen to me? Am I going to be okay? Are people going to like me? What am I risking? It's not that that's ignored in a pathological way, but it's no longer primary. What's primary is this greater life that I'm now serving. Not because I've got an identity that I'm here to serve a greater life, but because I've awoken to the great mystery of universal consciousness that I am and that we all are, and that is going through a process of higher evolution that I want to participate. I have to participate in to be true to it. And all of this also brings out a kind of vitality and wellness, including, ironically enough, because some people get into this discussion about, well, you can hear me talking about this universal care, living this bigger life, being called to serve at a higher level, the unfolding of higher evolution between us and bringing forth the potentials of each situation. Some of us hear that and we think, oh no, I already overgive. I already don't take care of myself, and I give to other people at the expense of my own needs. And now, Craig, you're telling me that I'm going to awaken in this way, and I'll just become the world's greatest self-abandoning, overgiving person. And I just want to say, it's the interesting thing in this is because your personal self, your own body, mind, your life is the aspect of the whole that you have the greatest power over and the most influence over. You naturally will take care of yourself too. So self-care does not sit on the other end of a scale in opposition to this universal care. It's holistically and naturally included in it, and we become someone who takes really good care of ourselves, but not because we see ourselves as this separate little being that needs us to take care of it, but because it's part of this whole that we're now naturally and organically and joyfully and freely, serving, because it's who we are. So I think I'll stop naming qualities, talking about them, and maybe just say for a few words about, well, can you see what that looks like practically? Meaning, where the rubber meets the road on the spiritual path is in our relationships with other people. It's in how we show up at our work. It's how we show up in our lives. So let's talk about relationships for a second. How can you sense how easy it would be to come together harmoniously with others when there weren't personal agendas and investments getting in the way? What gets in the way in relationship? Well, you want one thing and I want another. You think one thing's important, I think something else is important. Now, when we are both here really aligned with this higher consciousness, wanting whatever the greatest good that we can discern together, we're wanting that, our personal agendas are subordinated to our own desire for the greater good to become manifest. Doesn't mean, again, that we know what's for the greater good or we see it clearly. There's so much humility and innocence, we can't go there. But we know we don't just want to do what I don't want to do. I don't just want to do what I want to do. I don't just want to do what I think is the right thing. I want to know what you think. I want to know what you need, and I want to know what the whole situation needs, and I'm here for that. Just tune in for a moment to hopefully you've had that experience in relationships. Hopefully you have it regularly, but imagine that supercharged by this, radical consciousness that's now coming online. My simple point is that it's a transformer of relationships. This freedom from agenda, this ability to see clearly, to see deeply into people's situations, what's needed. All of this is a transformer of relationships. It's also a transformer of our work life. Can you sense how your work and all your contributions in the world are enhanced by the kind of ease and flow and good judgment and wisdom and flexibility I was speaking about? One thing I will share is I should share an example on both these. One thing I'll share on the work front is I've had many students who have awoken, begun to awaken in the ways I'm speaking about, who had people at their work just say, what happened to you? You have become, you're performing in this organization at a level so far beyond what we hired you to do. You're like, they suddenly get noticed and embraced and asked to perform all kinds of higher functions because people around them, even if they don't understand what it is, they recognize something. They say, there's something about you. It's that I had one student who was a pretty high level kind of organizational change not consultant, because she worked in the organization. Her area was organizational change, at an executive level in this big, huge healthcare organization. And this thing happened to her where everybody would say, we need you to be in this meeting, even though it's not your department, because of that wisdom thing you have. And say things like that wisdom thing, because they knew she had some extraordinary capacity to see into situations with penetrating insight and clarity, and that superseded any particular stakeholders' needs, but could see all the stakeholders and kind of coordinate all of that very naturally and intuitively. But this all happened through her spiritual practice, through her own beginning to awaken to this. And since I was speaking about relationships, I also just wanted to share, I've had a lot of times something happen where a few years ago when I was leading a lot of live retreats, I haven't done that for a few years, I will again, but people would sometimes bring their significant other on the retreat with me, and I had a number of times I've had spouses and adult children of practitioners that has come to me on the retreat or after or whatever, and say, whatever you did to my mom, whatever's happened to her, I want that, thank you. First, I've had to say thank you for what you did to my mom, meaning for how she's changed through the awakening. Or, what you did to my spouse, I really want some of that because they've changed so much. So it is something that other people very much notice and are impacted by this kind of transformation. And I guess maybe the last piece I just want to share about this is that in all of life, we become somebody who takes responsibility and owns every situation we're in. We see we're the whole, we take care of the whole. That's who we are. And this, by the way, is why I feel the world so desperately needs more enlightened people. Don't we need more enlightened people on this planet? More people who carry all the qualities and capacities I was just speaking about? As you begin to experience this changing in yourself and see it in others, you really realize how utterly different human life could be if more and more of us were attuned at this level and starting to live in this way. So that's one of the things that's always driving me, is that sense of possibility for not just you individually, not just one of us, but for the whole human race. I think in conclusion, I just want to say that I hope you agree with me that the world needs awakened people. It needs people who have stepped out of the dream of the separate self-sense and into the larger unity that we're all, that envelops us all and that we are all representatives of, in a sense. And I want to encourage you to really commit to go for it and hold nothing back. Put your spiritual practice first and see where it leads you. I wish you Godspeed on your journey.
This podcast is supported by our paying members in Craig's Awakened Life membership program. When you join the Awakened Life, each month you'll receive in-depth teachings and guidance in the practice of direct awakening, including a meditation workshop, 4 guided meditations, and a live online retreat with Craig. And when you register today, you can receive your first month for 50% off. Go to awakenedlifemembership.com to learn more and enroll. If you enjoyed today's episode, we hope you'll share our show with others. And please subscribe and rate us wherever you listen to your favorite shows. If you have a minute to write a short review on your podcast app, we would deeply appreciate your support. You can stay connected to the show by subscribing to our newsletter at meditationchangeseverything.com. Each week, we'll send you new audios and videos from Craig, and we'll also let you know when we release new episodes of the show. If the approach to meditation we've been exploring today inspires you, you are invited to tune into a 90-minute online workshop Craig will be hosting called Meditation 2.0, The Miracle of Direct Awakening. In the workshop, he'll share a powerful new approach to meditation practice and guide you in a series of brief meditation experiments so you can experience it for yourself. You can listen to that at freemeditationworkshop.com. That's freemeditationworkshop.com. Check out our show notes for links to all the ways you can stay in touch with Craig's work. Meditation Changes Everything is created by Craig Hamilton, Susan Fries, Mason Ewald, Stephanie Murphy, Will Bowman, and Richard Klein. From all of us, thank you for tuning in.